Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just gave quick thoughts on every Big Ten team, and it took quite some time, so we're going to pick up the pace just a little bit here. Thankfully, that is the biggest conference that I'll have to cover over the next couple of days, but let's jump into my predictions for this year in the Big Ten, and frankly, it's been really hard. I bounced back and forth a number of times with a number of different picks in terms of who I have in the championship, who I have winning that thing, and I've bounced back and forth probably a million times at this point. But let's jump into my predictions, and I just think Ohio State and Oregon are on a different level than a lot of teams in this conference. I think they're just they're going to play a different level of football. I think the talent level is off the absolute charts. They can do incredible amounts of things this upcoming year, and I think they have the two quarterbacks that I feel the most confident in going into this year. Obviously, there are some really good guys on the bottom half of that conference with Miller Moss, with some of the other guys in that conference, but overall, Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel are the two guys that I look at and say, they're going to play good football. I feel really good about that. I know there's some questions around Will Howard. I don't nearly have the same questions that other people do. Penn State is a team that I think is going to make some noise, just miss out because of tiebreakers and things of that nature. Avoiding Oregon and Michigan is an absolute huge win for this team, and definitely something that they're going to be really happy about because it likely gets them into the playoff. Michigan is going to lose three games that they likely should lose, frankly. I don't think there's much argument that when you look at Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, those are three teams that you feel like are better than Michigan, and losing those games isn't the craziest thing in the world. I think USC is going to put together a really nice year, honestly. I think that defense is going to take a little bit more of a step forward than some people expect. Nebraska is one of those teams that I really, really like going into this year, and I think it really just comes down, can Dylan Raiola execute? If he can execute at the level that I expect him to, then they're going to be more than fine. Iowa is a team that I just can't buy into this offense yet, and they're playing a tougher schedule than they usually play, obviously, with the divisions going away, so I just don't feel all that great about it. Wisconsin and Rutgers are two teams that are really, really fun this upcoming year. Rutgers is a team that it might seem a little bit weird having them this high in this conference, but it's a really solid squad, and definitely one that can build into something much better in years to come. But overall, I very much like them, and I think they're going to make noise this year. Michigan State, another one. I think Aiden Childs is just that much of a difference maker. I think he's going to win games that no one expects them to win at the end of the day. And then you move on to Washington, Indiana, that absolutely are going to be dangerous teams, but I just think there's too many questions. There's too many moving parts in both of those places to really get the results that you want this upcoming year. Maryland, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Minnesota, and UCLA are just going to struggle. It's hard for me to look any other way in that. I think Maryland has a shot to make some noise, but for the most part, I think it's just going to be a little bit ugly at times overall. But I think it's a really fun conference. I think when you look from top to bottom, it's a little bit more segmented than other conferences will be. There's no two ways about that. But overall, I think it's one of those that adds a lot of intrigue. When you look at a Nebraska team, or you look at a USC team, or even an Iowa team, all of those just need a couple of little things to go right for them where anything can open up. If USC plays top 60, top 70 defense, they could shoot above Penn State. If Iowa plays top 80, top 70 offense, they can shoot above Michigan and definitely make some noise in this conference. So I think there's a ton of different teams that maybe they won't necessarily win this conference. Maybe they won't necessarily, jump up into Indianapolis and make some crazy noise this year, but they're going to have plenty to say, and they're going to absolutely win one of those games that could throw a wrench into the works for Ohio State or for Oregon or for Penn State or for Michigan, and it would cause definitely a lot of turmoil in this conference. So I think overall, when I look at this conference, I've been trying every which way to be a little bit different, to try to pick some different teams in that championship game, but when I look at it, Ohio State and Oregon are just a little bit different than everyone else in this conference, and the gap is wide enough for me to feel comfortable making these picks. But let's move on to all of the awards that are coming after this. We know that it's Ohio State and Oregon and Indianapolis. What is on the other side of that is the big time question, because these two talent levels are on the absolute top of the charts. And I'm not necessarily going to reveal which way I went in that game in the regular season because it could be revenge one way or the other. Whether it's Oregon getting revenge for Ohio State coming into Eugene and getting that win, or Ohio State getting revenge for them ruining what could have been a perfect season and one of the more remarkable seasons in college football history. So there is definitely going to be some energy around this one way or the other. But at the end of the day, I think when you come down to it and you really have to make a pick of who's winning that thing, Ohio State's just such a good team. I look at them top to bottom, and I just cannot find an issue. I know that people are worried about Will Howard. I know people are worried about this offensive line. Both of those things got better from a year ago, and that was an 11-1 team a year ago that was not too far off from winning that Michigan game. I understand that Michigan controlled the pace for a lot of that game, but one or two plays there from the quarterback position for Ohio State would have totally changed that game early on, and who knows the way we're talking right now. But overall, this is a team that just has everything in place. This is the reason that all of these guys came back. There was not a hesitation in their voice when they said they came back for a national title and nothing less. They meant that. And Denzel Burke and all of the guys, JT Tuiomalau, Jack Sawyer, you had a ton of guys that decided NFL can wait. We're going to win a title. We're going to bring one back to Columbus, and it would be a special thing to happen. But as of right now, I do have them winning the Big Ten. I do have them getting over that first hurdle in what is a ton of hurdles this upcoming year for Ohio State. The Offensive Player of the Year, I think, is Dillon Gabriel. I think he's going to put up just ridiculous numbers in this Will Stein offense, if I'm being totally honest. I think they're a team that, although they did improve on the defensive side of the ball from last year, I still think they're going to need some help from time to time to win some of those games by, a shootout type of game. So I think Dillon Gabriel is going to put up ridiculous stats. You have Evan Stewart on the outside. You have Tez Johnson. So many guys that can make some noise that I just think this guy's going to put up just ridiculous numbers in Will Stein's offense. I think the other guy to watch there, in my opinion, would be Travion Henderson. I think he is someone that can be a total difference maker for Ohio State, and among all of the different players on Ohio State that are downright scary, I think this guy might be the best of the bunch. So I very much like him, and I think he's going to make plenty of noise this upcoming year. The Defensive Player of the Year I picked is Abdul Carter. I think he's a total difference maker. He's been a little bit overshadowed heading into the season with all of the different things happening among the top two in this conference, Oregon and Ohio State, but I look at this kid as a total game wrecker. He is someone that is stepping into kind of that Chop Robinson area where at edge rushing, but can drop back into coverage whenever you need him to. And I think that's what really makes him dangerous, because he's going to get to the quarterback. That has never been an issue for him in his past, and it will not be an issue going forward. I can almost promise you that. But I think overall, he's going to be able to drop into coverage, play some of the running backs in coverage, do some of the things that he did in the past, and he's going to be successful doing it. So I think he's one of those players that not only is going to be an absolute game wrecker in the backfield, but will make plenty of plays in coverage and definitely will open up some things for this team. Then I have Freshman of the Year, Jeremiah Smith. I don't know if this is much of a question. He is a guy that came onto the scene and just wowed everyone immediately. He did incredible things right from the jump and absolutely is someone that is going to turn this conference on its head. He does things on the football field that physically should not be possible, if I'm being totally honest. So a very, very talented kid, someone I like a ton and definitely is going to make some noise. Dylan Raiola, obviously someone else to watch there, but I just think Jeremiah Smith is going to do ridiculous things this upcoming year. And then finally, the transfer of the year, I have Caleb Downs. I think he's going to be a total difference maker on the back end of this defense, and frankly, they didn't even need him. They just went out and got, added rocket boosters to a Lamborghini. They absolutely had an incredible back end, and then, in my opinion, they went out and added the best player in the country. So I think Caleb Downs is a total difference maker and someone that just makes this defense almost impossible to deal with. I think there was a little bit of an opening before he came around, but now that you have that security blanket on the back of the defense and a guy that can play the pass, he can play the run, he can do everything you want him to do, he's terrifying, and this defense is ultra terrifying. And the other guy to watch there is Evan Stewart, the wide receiver from Oregon. I think both of those guys are going to make plenty of noise in this conference, but overall, it's a crazy conference. There's no two ways about that. This is going to be one of those that we're going to have to continuously update and continuously break down because there are so many variables here. Not necessarily in the top two. I think they're pretty much set in stone in terms of they're going to be really good football teams. They might not necessarily reach the goals that they want to this year, but Oregon and Ohio State are going to play really good football. Penn State can be opened up. Just if Drew Aller answers the call, he can do some really remarkable things this year. Michigan obviously has a ton on their plate, but if that quarterback room comes together a little bit better than we're expecting it to right now, this is a team that can beat a Texas-type team. They can beat an Oregon-type team. They can even beat Ohio State. So this is a very dangerous team in its own right. And then you look down the list. You got USC, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, even Rutgers. I think all can be teams that it might not be, the prettiest season start to finish, but there's going to be a Saturday where they just play really good football. And you look up and they're up by 10, 14 points on an Ohio State or an Oregon in the earliest second quarter, and you're wondering what happened. So I think that's going to be something that is almost inevitable in this conference. But overall, when I look at what is going on in this conference going into this year, Ohio State and Oregon are just different. Ohio State and Oregon are just playing a different level of football than pretty much everyone else in the conference. I think there's plenty of talent in this conference, and they absolutely will be able to make noise in this conference. But overall, those are the two teams, and I feel fairly confident about that. So I do have Ohio State coming away with a Big Ten title, and if that was it for Ohio State fans and they were happy with that, that would be great. But that is just the start. They got to make it to the playoff. They got to win a national title. So there's still a ton on the table, but I do think they get over that first hurdle and win a Big Ten title, and then it's off to the races. So we'll break it down all of the stuff as you need to know it. Stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll get into the SEC and continue on down the line before we get to our playoff predictions on Friday. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we're going to break down the group of five. That's the other side of this playoff argument. So I want to break down all of these conferences and just give you an idea of bare bones what you're looking at going into this year in every one of the group of five conferences. So we'll talk about that right after this. So stick with us.